Testing audio. Alright. Glad nobody was there to see that, hopefully. Alright, so guess this is the start of stream one of what will hopefully be many in this project of converting a Cr10S-Pro 3D printer to a Voron Switchwire. So basically, what's going on is I have a Cr10S-Pro. It's a bed slinger 3D printer, which is, you can essentially think of it as you have one, usually like a set of uh, metal extrusions, where you've got two bars here, and then you've got one bar here, and then you've got the print bed that sits in between them, goes that way, and then you've got the carriage that has all of the printer stuff on it. It goes left and right, and then the whole carriage, or the gantry itself, goes up and down. And so typically Voron 3D printers, they've got the kind where the bed moves up and down, and they've also got the flying gantry one where the gantry moves up, down, right, left, and forward, back. And the bed is completely stationary. But the one that I plan to convert, since it's got a very similar movement system, is the Voron Switchwire. One of the things that does make it different from this kind of movement system is the Cr10S-Pro has one motor on the x-axis that has a belt attached to it, moves the x back and forth, and then there's two Z motors for two of the Z lead screws that move the whole carriage up and down. What the Voron Switchwire does is it's got two motors down here, and they've got a series of belts that control the entire gantry. So instead of three motors, you use two, um, and it's all sort of connected, which is kind of cool. Also, the Voron Switchwire uses linear rails instead of the rubber wheels that go along the extrusion. Was kind of decided to do this partially because there's like a bunch of 3D printer conversions into a switch wire when it comes to something like the Ender 3, or even other CR 3D printers like the CR10, I think even the CR10S potentially, where there are guides on how to do it, videos on how to do it. The Cr10S-Pro is a bit of a different story. There are a couple people that have documented it in the sense that they've either documented the completed part, or they've documented their like assembly of it, but they haven't actually done the full thing. Like they haven't showcased it actually working. So proof that it's possible, but there's no easy like start to finish. This is exactly what you have to do. So that's something that I intend to do with this. Um, Hopefully, it's gonna not take too long, but yeah, that was part of the inspiration and part of the reason why it actually is gonna take. There is no real guide to it. Is partially because of how the 3D printer is designed. So, for the typical Ender printers and the CR10 style printers, you've got aluminum extrusion, right? You've got like the frame is made out of these aluminum extrusions, and also the bottom part is composed of, I guess you could say, naked aluminum extrusions, where there's like one aluminum extrusion here, like one here, and that's pretty much the bulk of it, that this sits on top of, like that, essentially. Um, Differences with the Cr10S Pro is it technically does have these, but they're actually, the whole thing is kind of encased in like a thin sheet of metal. So you've got this, and then you've got this thin sheet of metal here instead of those extrusions, which means that if you do want to perform this conversion, the switch wire specifically needs access to these bottom extrusions. So in order to give it access, you're going to have to make incisions like here and here in order to create a hole for that. There is a guy who did it, so pretty much going to be following what he's doing. But yeah, that's about the long and short of it. I'm going to test my audio to make sure. Okay, audio is working. So yeah, first part of this is the StealthBurner. So that is the combination hotend and extruder. So it's a direct drive, which means you've got the extruder and the hotend one place. And yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Um, so I guess I will get started on that and see if anyone potentially comes along. Okay, I've got printed instructions right here. Um, and I'll also, as I'm doing this, kind of talk about, oh, that's not the right ones, talk about the process. Where is it? Oh, there. The process of sort of how this has been going so far, since I have already printed a lot of the stuff. That's another thing to keep in mind with this, as as I start this. Obviously, with Vorons, there is a certain amount of things that need to be 3D printed. And the other kind of annoying thing with the Cr10S Pro is all of the electronics are encased within that metal frame, within that like bent sheet of metal, which means it's kind of difficult to put it in an enclosure because you end up putting the whole thing in an enclosure, and when you put the whole thing in an enclosure, that means A, you don't have access to the screen, and B, that means that you do not, and B, that means if you don't have any form of ventilation in there, you could potentially damage the electronic components like the power supply and such. So, not ideal. If you watch the YouTube short I made in sort of preparation for it, I did kind of get around that with I did kind of get around that with, sorry, got around that by cutting some holes in the sides to kind of let the internals breathe, and then 3D printing like a sort of, I guess you could call them vents that go from the vents on the sides of that folded sheet of metal to the outside. I mean, it kind of worked. I kind of had to duct tape it together. Um, so it's not, I mean, it hasn't broken yet, so seems to have worked fine. Also added like intake fans to the enclosure to make sure it didn't get too hot. And yeah, so tried to take precautions. this is. Might need something else. Alright. Just want to get this down all the way. There we go. Perfect. Okay. M3 is 16. Okay. I am looking at the broadcast. That is not as smooth. Think I might want to. Why is that so bad? It was not this way. Something is going on. It's audio bit rate. Is it the video bit rate? Alright, I'm gonna turn off the camera for 1 second. Doesn't look like that did anything. Tune down the video settings. Ah, okay. Okay, I see. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. That is my... Oh, okay. Video quality isn't great, so I might need to use a different computer next time. Probably wasn't the best idea to use something from 2015, but at least those images were relatively clear. Okay, try and stay in frame a little bit better. First screws in. Oh, by the way, these pieces, for whatever reason on the bill of materials, they chose as like one of the suppliers these kind of big, um, these thicker heated inserts instead of these thinner ones. And I mean, these thinner ones aren't, these exact ones aren't from one of the sellers they recommended, but these ones were. And as you can maybe tell, they were a little too big, and it caused some plastic to leak out, so I had to kind of file that down. But yeah, it's kind of odd how they'd choose those, or maybe it's an old link or something. But regardless, okay, let's keep going. But yeah, as I was saying, yeah, an enclosure is definitely required for these for the 3D printed parts, and 3D printer is not particularly keen on enclosures, so you've got to make your own or kind of get creative. I've heard there are people who can like use trash bags as a sort of makeshift enclosure, but it is definitely something to be aware of if you want to attempt this like I'm attempting it. This is also my first Voron build. Is that the right one? I do not think it is. Don't want to bring out the hammer for this one. There we go. Nice. Okay, you've got to take this. Need to add this onto it. Oh, another thing I had to do, if you might potentially notice if you're familiar with Voron, this is actually a bit of a customized hot end afterburner setup. So, I mean, that's the wrong one. But this is meant to be for a micro Swiss, um, what would you call it? Cooling, yeah, for the cooler. So, like this one, but the real one is a bit shorter than this one, so it fits, I promise. I tested it. Okay, I see. I think that's about as far as it goes in. Yeah, I think that's about as far as it's gonna go. Okay. Next up, we've got this guy. Off the shaft easily. Okay, it looks like it's these. Hmm. Okay. Might have to bust out the hammer again for this one. Let's try it this way. No, actually. Just give it a little tap. There we go. Alright, that looks like it's in. By the way, I should also probably mention that since you are 3D printing in an enclosure, and if you've made any modifications, and you're doing this to a Cr10S-Pro, printing them in a Cr10S-Pro, not another printer, you may want to make sure you didn't make any modifications out of PLA that have any element of weight to them, because if you do, you're probably going to end up with something similar to what I had to deal with, which was a bunch of stuff drooping and sagging and causing a bunch of print failures. So, don't repeat my mistakes. Now, looks like I'm gonna need a smaller Allen key for that one. I think I've got one. How small is the question? How small indeed. Okay, I think I got something. Just a minute. Where did I? Yeah, it doesn't matter. No, okay, it's slightly bigger. No problem. Perfect. All right. So you also need to add the second bearing into here. That's fine. Why can you only add it in this way? Alright, I'm gonna bust out the hammer, hopefully the last time. Alright, that did not entirely work. Oh, I have a solution for that. Get one more of these. Get one bigger one. Perfect. Nah, I'll get one bigger one. This should work. There we go. Okay. Alright. Looks like we have success on that one. Now, we add this screw right in here. Not sure entirely what this does just yet. Come on, get in there. There we go. It's not supposed to go in all the way, it seems. We'll leave it there for now. And on to the next page. That's where the other one comes in. Of course. Come on. Okay. that one might be a little stripped, so the wrench might be a little stripped, but this doesn't need to work for now. Okay. Gear. Initial position is 15. Okay. So this goes onto this part. Very nice. Looks like there's a little bit of resistance. Where is it catching? Ah, it's catching on that. Let's see if I can just kind of... Yeah, that's what I was talking about with these big ones. I ended up pushing a piece of that out. Just a sec. Don't know if I've got... I probably have something to deal with that. Gonna have to get used to operating stuff within a camera. I have an X-Acto knife for this somewhere, but that might be good enough. Still kind of catching a little bit. And this shape here doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just kind of trying to... Okay. That should be a little bit better. Okay. Still not perfect, but at this point, probably good enough for now. Okay, so now that needs to collide with this guy, like so. Like that. pushed in, like, ooh. Huh. Ah. Uh-huh. I might have mixed and matched. Hmm. Why is this different looking? Why is that different looking? Well, that part fits. Ah, okay. Well, I thought I test fit these. Hmm. Well, at this point, I don't know if there's really much else I can do at this point. That's annoying. I guess that's what happens when you try and mix and match. I figured they'd all be the same, but clearly that is not the case. Looks like I could potentially fix this by cutting that piece off, but probably not the best idea at this point. Okay, well, looks like we might have to cut this a little bit short. Sorry about that. I mean, nobody's watching right now, but darn it. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to end the stream now. I'll pick it up tomorrow. Maybe I'll do it in the morning. The lighting's not gonna be great, but I guess I'll just have to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, sorry. Alright, I'm gonna end the stream. And I'll reprint different version of that and won't screw it up this time.